The second episode of 1923 doesn't really take place during the holiday season, but the Paramount Plus drama delivered a surprising gift anyway. One of haunted Spencer Dutton's incredibly rare smiles. And yes, we're certain that his tragedy to joy ratio is 9-to-1. One could argue that his surviving the attack was a present in and of itself. In today's video, we'll be recapping episode 2 of 1923, season 1. So keep watching to find out. First of all, life number 9? Check. Let's review the events and, of course, people that brought us to the blessed moment in which Spencer showed us his teeth, as well as the rest of the major action, not to mention all the sheep drama in episode 2 of 1923, titled Nature's Empty Throne. The second episode of the Yellowstone prequel, 1923, picked up right where the premiere left off, with Spencer Dutton, played by Brandon Sklenar, about to become a leopard's late-night snack. During a dimly lit, fast-paced scene punctuated by growls, screams, and gunshots, the hunter was about to down the beast, but not before sustaining a couple of gangrene-inviting injuries. Sadly, his friend and guide was not so lucky, dying soon after the animal brutally attacked him. The episode started off just as the leopard attacked Spencer. They fought, and it eventually got off him and ran off. He shot and missed, but just then, Spencer's assistants came running, yelling his name. He barely responded before the elusive cat reappeared and took down one of them. As the leopard was dragging the man away, Spencer and the other assistant followed. They speared the cat and then shot it dead, but it was too late for their friend. Coming up, how they escaped the leopard. Though Spencer took off his shirt and used it to staunch the wounded man's torn throats, the leopard's victim died quickly. Spencer marched into the dining tent, grabbed a bottle of booze and a glass, shoved everything off a table, then calmly asked the assembled tourists if they had a cigarette. They did, and he lit up as they stared shocked. Then Spencer asked Holland, the safari director, to send them back to their tents so that one of the guests, a doctor, could clean the deep, filthy scratches the leopard had left on his body. When that was done and arrangements were in the works for the fallen Cagaso to be brought home, all Holland wanted to talk about was what it felt like for Spencer to go head-to-head with the beast. But Spence wasn't having it. First, he noted that Holland hadn't said he was sorry about Cagaso's death. Then he pointed out that the cats were a breeding pair, which always hunted together, but Holland only showed them one set of tracks. Spencer leveled his gun at the man, who visibly and guiltily blanched. Things escalated until Spencer shot his gun just past the man's head and held it at his throat. And only when Holland babbled his apology over and over did Spencer relent. But he made sure Holland knew that he was still alive because Spencer needed a ride to Nairobi in the morning. Next up, looking death in the eye. The next time we see Spencer, he's drinking at a bar in Nairobi where he's the object of obsession for a bunch of British females. One who's called Alexandra approached him to flirt and ascertain his profession. Once she confirms that he's a hunter, the others rush in. Apparently, Spencer's reputation preceded him. To the women, he's the American war hero who hunted the man-eaters. Alexandra seemed less dizzily giddy than her friends, and she asked him, if not for the romance of it, why he does what he does. Spencer replied, because dying is the most alive you'll ever feel. Later, Spencer's boss informed him that he was heading out to Tanganyika to take down a spotted hyena that had been attacking railroad workers, and his car would be waiting in the morning. Elsewhere in the hotel restaurant, Alexandra's father celebrated her engagement at a lavish dinner party. She smiled at his toast, but then downed her champagne in one gulp to quickly excuse herself from the table. She raced to the balcony and struggled to take deep breaths. When her friend Jennifer followed, Alexandra confessed that she didn't want to get married. Jennifer countered that her fiancé was kind, and there were so many men who were not. She cheered her up a little, then returned to the party while Alex took another moment for herself. That moment carries her to yet another of the hotel's bars, where she finds Spencer, and they engage in banter and almost kiss. The next morning, they saw each other from across the parking lot and exchanged a nod before he took off. But just as his car pulled out of the driveway, Alex made up her mind about something. She grabbed her suitcase and ran after Spencer's car. Moving on to No More Mr. Nice Dutton. Back in Montana, Jacob and the other man in the cattle drive heard the gunshots we saw at the end of the last episode. As they raced to the top of the mountain, we saw that Jack's pinned under his horse, with his gun just out of reach. A sheep herder took aim at him, but a bullet from Jake's men took that guy out. After a brief firefight, the eldest Dutton rode up to Banner Cretan, who put his hands in the air in surrender. This doesn't stop Jake from repeatedly pistol whipping him, yelling about the prairie maggots he'd been grazing on Dutton land. There was a lot more shouting as Banner said they didn't start the shooting, and Jack said they did. Jake had some of his men drive the sheep toward the reservation, then place nooses around Banner's and his 3 colleagues' necks as they sat astride their horses. One of those men immediately got hanged when his horse rode off behind the Dutton group. Banner urged the others to stay very still as they tried to work their bound hands free, but it was to no avail. Pretty soon the other 3 were literally twisting in the wind, and he was the only man still sitting on his horse. Back at the site of the hangings, one of the other men's horses came back, and Banner was lucky to be able to get his hand into his saddlebag and remove a knife. He used it to cut his hands free, then climbed his own rope high enough to cut himself down. He hit the ground with a thud and coughed and wheezed a lot, but he's alive and happy about it. Not to mention the ladies in waiting. Back at the ranch, Kara sat outside because she heard the dogs barking at something. Emma joined her, reporting that Elizabeth was upstairs, singing and waltzing around as she practiced for her wedding reception. They talked about how soft she was, thanks to being raised mostly in Boston, and spending her summers in Montana. Emma remarked about how she'd hoped Jack's future wife would take some of the fire out of the next generation, but that didn't seem to be the case. Kara observed that it seemed her son was marrying gasoline and that the fire would only get bigger. Then she admitted that she was sitting outside because the house felt too empty with the men gone, and Emma was of the same mind. Coming up, no help at all. A Native American woman entered an office and announced that she was there to see the superintendent. The white woman behind the desk seemed disinclined to help her, but bid her to sit and wait. An elderly Native American man was also waiting, and he told the newcomer that he also had an appointment and had been sitting there for 2 days. When the woman eventually went in to see Superintendent Worth, she told him that her granddaughter attended a school in the Dakota, and that the girl lived with her before they took her. She wanted her granddaughter to attend a Baptist day school on the reservation, but he said that wasn't possible, given that the girl's mother was dead and her father was away working the reservation's herd, and she was not with her family in her primary residence. It was definitely infuriating to hear Worth's holier-than-thou tone as he parroted this ridiculousness to the grandmother. The woman countered that she was her family, but his only not helpful suggestion was that the grandmother should officially adopt her granddaughter, after which she leaves. It was presumed that Tiona must be her granddaughter. Elsewhere, Zane and the sheep arrive at the reservation, where he gifted the herd to a group of Native American men on horseback. They looked a bit confused, but then one gave Zane a knife to give Jacob as a token of gratitude. Back with the main herd, Jacob decided that they'd reached a good place to hold for a while. He instructed John Sr. to pick 3 cowboys to stay with the animals, and the rest whooped in happiness as they prepared to head home. And last but not least, Tiona's life gets worse. At the torture chamber, aka the Catholic school for Native American girls, mean Sister Mary was back to her harsh and exacting ways, but she seemed a little afraid of Tiona after the events of the premiere. The girls were given lessons in being a good, obedient prairie wife by sweeping and doing the laundry, but Tiona was simmering the whole time, and at dinner, when she saw maggots writhing in the food for which she was supposed to be thanking God in English, she instead muttered, "I'd rather be hit than eat this," in her native language. Sister Mary ran over to slap her. Tiona responded by body slamming the nun into the table. That earned her a trip to the hot box, which was a narrow structure that looked similar to an outhouse. Father Renaud threatened to bury her alive if she kept up her behavior. When she was taken out, God knows how many hours later, she was feverish and barely able to stand. She was soaking in an ice bath when a nun acted like she would help her clean up, but used it as an excuse to touch her in an inappropriate manner, with only Sister Mary's entrance stopping the abuse from going further. Sister Mary, who was sporting an impressive shiner, told Tiona that she was the one who was there to help her learn the skills that would help her thrive as a mother and wife. Then she thrashed her, saying that she'd sworn to kill the Indian in her. Before she left, the nun vowed that if she ever laid a hand on her again, she'd kill them all. That's a wrap for this video. What do you think of the recap? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this, and we'll see you in the next one.